Yo, it's your boy Chauncey.
And it's your favorite boyfriend, Uncle Wayne.
This is the WTF He Say podcast.
That's what's up. Met this young man. Well, I just came in late night.
Yeah, it was.
At the get something from the store, and met my man Shawn. Cool Shawn.
Yeah.
And then
it was after midnight.
Yeah, we were just out. And then later on,
you were with your daughter.
When I met, yeah.
She was in a carrying case.
Right. Because she would stay up late to stay up with me, so I would just keep her wherever I'm going. So I went to the store, stopped by there. Months later, I go to the academy. I get hired. Somehow I end up being a police officer. While I'm in the academy, there's this thing called the challenge run. And then I see the challenge run going. I said, yo, that's my man Shawn. Wrapping up the challenge run. Then we reconnected there, and he went on to a successful career in law enforcement, one of the greatest of all times out there in Richland County. Also, but beyond that, the connection was cool because that was just a good brother to meet. Right. He's got a whole lot of other things that's happened since then. And I'm sorry I didn't say this in the beginning, but this is Dr. Shawn McDaniels. He's got to put some respect on his name. Doctor.
Gotcha.
All right. Gotcha. And he's a father. He's a good friend, a great friend, and I trust him. Been friends a long time. So this is my man, Shawn, Dr. Shawn McDaniels.
All right, welcome.
I appreciate being here, man. Yeah, and let me just clarify, so he wasn't just hanging out at the club with his daughter. No, he means that literally. He used to hang out with his kid. She was very little, and you had night duty, I believe. You were talking about just trying to keep her busy, and you ran to the convenience store for something with his child. And when we pushed forward, that's when we used to hang out to play a game.
Right, and I used to beat him.
That's not true.
Florida A&M.
That's not true.
He would get all these big time universities, Division I schools. It was a college football. NCAA. I would beat him. I beat him one time with FAMU. He was so sick because he had some big time university. He don't want to live it down. But it was like the last play of the game and I beat him. But it's all good.
Then his wife called him and it was like, where you at?
Right. And I'd be like, hey, I'm at Shawn's house.
And then it was all cool.
It was all good.
It was all good.
Wasn't out there nature.
No.
Hey, I do have a question about that. What console were y'all playing on back then?
Yeah, so it was PS2.
No, don't lie.
No,
it might have been PS2 or Sega Genesis.
No, it was PS2, but it wasn't NCAA though, brother. It was the game that was the thing before NCAA came out. It was the I can't remember the name of it. I don't want to give the wrong game the wrong props, but it was the game right before. But when NCAA came out,
you was on that hard.
Yeah, we lost our mind. And then Madden came out.
Right.
That was the early parts of Madden. But just good time. We were starting our careers. Right. Both in law enforcement.
Oh, what year was that you started? Y'all started at the same time?
I started in 96, but I was at South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice for the first couple of years. And I went to public safety. And then I went to the academy. And in 1999, I went to Richland County Sheriff's Department.
I think it was 98.
I was 99. 98, I actually I was still at public safety.
Nah, bro. Let me tell you why.
Okay, tell me.
I graduated in June of 98 from the academy. You had graduated like a class or two before me.
Yeah, you're right. But I'm gonna update you real quick. So in 1998, I was still at DJJ. I was at the police department of DJJ called South Carolina Public Safety.
Okay.
So in 98, you're right, I went to the academy. But in 99, I transferred from DJJ to Richland.
Right. There you go. Yeah, but I remember because your class was just in front of mine.
365.
And how many total years?
How many?
Total years?
Total years, 25 years in law enforcement. Okay. I retired as soon as I could.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Nah, and to make room for everybody else coming behind you.
That's a good excuse.
Stop stifling the system.
That's a good excuse. That's the one I'm looking for right there.
Yeah, no, seriously.
That's the one I'm looking for right there.
People need to stop stifling the system.
I feel you.
Let's holding on to positions just because you can and not preparing for retirement.
Now, tell us about what you're doing right now, because you have a whole nother life. And you had I see you have your tag on Benedict College. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw a lot of individuals retiring and having to come back and not having any choices. right? And so I began this journey from an academic standpoint. I mean, way back, like, when I first got hired, I didn't even have a bachelor's degree at the time. And so I had college experience, had pledged Alpha Phi Alpha, and, had to end up, cutting my time in college short. And so then I went back to school when I made investigations, got my bachelor's degree from Springfield College. And I went and got my master's degree, started teaching as an adjunct at Springfield College in Charleston. Then I went ahead and saw it fit to go ahead and get my doctorate degree. I currently hold a doctor of philosophy degree in conflict analysis and resolution. And so just recently defended the dissertation on basically in a nutshell, the power of collaborative convergence as a style of problem solving, no matter what the problem is. So getting people to understand how conflict really is and how to understand the process of dealing with conflict. It's one of those things that we're not taught.
Okay. Now I'm going to rewind it back a little bit more. If you don't mind telling the people a little more, as much as you can share about yourself. Now, you went to college early, as most people, right after high school. I did,
yeah, right out of high school.
What school you went to?
Jersey City State. Well, first I started at a 2-year school. I went to Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, from the Bricks, better known as Brick City.
There you go.
And went to Essex County College. From Essex County College, I went to Jersey City State, lived on campus, had the whole on campus, off campus apartment situation set up. And from there, I went to Springfield College and wrapped up my undergrad degree. Then I went to Troy University here, and then finished up with Nova Southeastern University with the PhD. And currently, I'm a full-time faculty member with Benedict College. I get what you're saying in reference to South Carolina State, but I'm gonna tell you, I'll put my president up against any president in the HBCU. Dr. Rosalind Clark Artist, she's just an amazing leader. And what we're trying to do at Benedict College in this area, conflict resolution, is amazing also. We opened up the nation's first conflict resolution center on an HBCU campus, where our students and our interns are actually taught how to peer mediate a conflict on campus, like as a professional. And so I'm excited about that.
Now, my question specifically about this conflict resolution, because being a police officer, you're 25 years of experience with that all that is conflict resolution.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're able to pull on that a little bit, dealing with your current employment, your current career,
absolutely,
what you're working on. So I'm sure I want to know how valuable you think that experience was currently now for what you utilize it for.
Yeah, extremely valuable. To be honest with you, out of the 25 years, 17 of those years was spent in CID, one of the sergeants in CID. So during those 17 years, working primarily major crime cases, shooting incidents, homicide cases, I noticed that typically, after investigating it, you kind of peel the layers back a little bit, and you get to understand people and human behavior. And I began to notice that there was some consistent behavior in terms of patterns that someone knew about the beef between two people, or the suspect and the victim, but yet clearly prior to that incident, erupting into in some cases a murder, they just didn't have the skill set. They didn't what tools they could use to de-escalate that situation. They don't understand how the brain works. Most of us don't. That's why conflict resolution is, it's sounding like a household name now, but a lot of people still don't understand how the science behind conflict and the analysis of conflict prior to the resolution of it, which is why we keep making knee-jerk decisions that ultimately end up costing us more time, more money, and in some cases, our lives. Yeah, so it's about understanding it as a system, understanding the process of solving conflict as a system, no differently than the system that you have every day. Every day you put something in your body, and you know that your body and the systems within your body are going to actually do what with it? It's going to excrete it. Yeah, everything you do is a system. Right. A meal that you're going to make to surprise your wife with, you've never made it before, but you're going to put that through a system. You're going to utilize a recipe. You should. I hope you do, right? Instead of guessing. And when you guess, you make bad decisions, and the results are typically
negative.
Yeah, not good, not good. So conflict is the same way. So when you input a conflict, when it's in front of you, you need to understand how that system works to actually process it, so that you can become good at it, right? So we can become good at it, and we need to do better with getting that information out.
I remember when we were in the academy. I'm not sure if you had the same experience. They had this thing called verbal judo.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was a conflict resolution skill, amongst many others. You know, as simple as that. Things that they taught us there
Sure.
to help resolve some conflict.
Or on the lesser term, we like to call it the gift of gab, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have the ability to communicate, you should be able to get yourself out of conflicts in some form, and at least in that perspective.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because you're dealing with a hostile situation generally, law enforcement officer. But like you said, it's a day-to-day conversation.
It is day-to-day. And did you think that was effective, that training? Both of you, did you think that was effective?
At the time, it was.
Really?
At the time. I think, of course,
You used
everything
it on the
evolved.
street?
I did on patrol. But
did you use your natural?
It was natural. But that was a part.
That was
of
the
it.
point I was going to get to.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that is taught, we can go into a vast majority of things are most likely useful. But when you come into any kind of situation with a set of experiences and experience doing something, you're going to result back to what your experiences taught you. For example, if you've been in any kind of physical conflict, right, where you have to fight or defend yourself, right? I understand that you're taught a whole lot of different things, but in that instance, you're going to go for what you know works, right? And that's typically the same thing with the verbal judo. I know what works for me. I know what I can say, what I can get away with. I know how I can articulate myself in an appropriate way, or if it's not an appropriate way, I know what works for me. Now, some of the verbal judo that they taught us, I couldn't tell you one thing.
Right.
I can tell you now.
And that's the point that I'm trying to make to you. Oftentimes we take on training within the field, and it's not sustainable. So here we are. We've been doing it for so long. The only reason why I'm familiar with verbal judo now, still to this day, is because of my current focus and understanding the difference. How verbal judo uses the style of avoidance, oftentimes in its process and its practice.
Right, because
it's work, and so like that doesn't it's not really the best skill towards providing value, like instantaneous value to an emotional situation, because at the end of the day, when someone is upset, they're seeking value, and they need it instantaneously. And when they feel like they're not going to get it, then they're pushing to what is known as the stem part of their brain, right? So understand how the brain works. And let's just be real. A lot of times we go through training. There's no measurable training. Not just in law enforcement, education, the corporate world, we're just actually going through the motion, signing your name on a sign-in sheet and then hoping that somebody will actually be able to remember it. But you and I both know that when you mess up, that training sheet is going to be the one to say that you were informed.
You should have known.
Right.
So yeah, we just have to do a good job of making sure that the training is sustainable. One way to do that is to make sure that we're measuring it, like pre and post tests. Showing up just to kind of hang out with your buddies because you ain't seen them in a long time because you're on different shifts. That's not cool. Like, you're playing with training, and then you're coming out here and you're playing with people's lives. Like, I take issue with that. So we should be, that's not the officers. I take issue with individuals not taking training seriously in terms of administering it.
We talk a lot about, I guess, because we dealt with, all three of us here, thousands and thousands of critical incidents. When you think of our lifespan, whether it be your own individual or people's that you dealt with. And we've talked a lot about raising our children with these kinds of skill sets to deal with life. And that's why one of the reasons I really wanted to ask you to come down, because in relationships, you have to deal with conflicts. We see a lot of conflicts in relationships end up bad. Is there a way that, and I'm a little familiar, but do you think that's a part of relationships, handling and having a conflict resolution skills?
Are we talking about romantic relationships?
Romantic relationships. We're talking about, all of us has responded to domestic calls.
Sure.
Okay. All of us have dealt with them as a either patrol officer or as investigating them as an investigator of some sort.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying is, can these conflict resolution skills could have come into play to help us not even being present, having been called? Because if someone would have utilized some of these skills like intimate partner violence, could have been avoided.
Yeah, so I saw your show. Both of you did an amazing job on that. I love how you weren't just talking about a topic that seems to be interesting, but you were also offering information and offering resources. I thought that was really good about that. So thank you for that. To your question, the answer is of course, right? So but the problem is that conflict is lucrative, but it's lucrative for the wrong percentage of people, right? Where there are two main principles that we're not typically taught. We're not typically taught how to compound our money, and we're not typically taught how to resolve conflict collaboratively. But our systems are designed, and I can go into the theoretical aspect of it, but I won't. But it's, the system is designed to keep us separate and to not see the power of collaborative effort. So by the time that you're in a relationship, you have no real skill set on how to handle a conflict, whether it's between two friends or whether it's a romantic relationship. Like we're trained to be independent, which is in my opinion, and then just based on my research, it's a falsehood. There's nothing independent about our existence. We share everything. We're sharing this air right now. We're sharing this table. We're sharing when I get in my car, we're sharing the road. And so yet that is designed to prevent us from collaboratively approaching conflict. Let's just talk about that. Conflict is everywhere. You're not going to avoid it. What you wore today was a conflict, however short it may have been when you were younger and you were actually laying those school clothes out.
Middle school.
Yeah, right. You laying the new school clothes out the day before. You put these pants with that shirt.
Right. Yeah, that's a conflict. Seeing if I had the lines in my joint or not.
Absolutely.
When I had a flat top.
Yeah, you did. You tried to bring that back to you while you were on the road. I remember that. He was a detective wearing a box. Wasn't in the 80s either. I think I was on a murder scene one time when I was like, what? Wayne, what is you doing? Anyway, so you can't
glaze over that.
Yeah.
All right, we come back to that.
You can't. Yeah, you did, truly. You can't shake conflict. You can't shake that. But oftentimes we've been...
It's about to be a conflict right here.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Put some conflict resolution skills to test.
Right. Look, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But now I will say this now. You had it shaped up nice. Like, you ain't just play with it.
Yeah.
You had it. It wasn't looking raggedy.
Right.
Nah, it wasn't looking raggedy. It wasn't you ain't had no dye on it. Like, why may or nothing.
No, I'd have did that in like 88 though.
No doubt. But so conflict is everywhere, right? You can't avoid it, but yet you're skilled in avoiding it. Right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just, that's just what you've been trained to do. And unfortunately that becomes a habit that we find very hard to break. So yes, by the time you get into a relationship, number one, you've already observed other people handle conflict very poorly. And now if you're not given the skill set, you are now trained to handle conflict very poorly. Very poorly.
Yeah, I like the way you use trained.
Yeah, you're trained to do that. You're trained. Okay. And you're not only trained in your household, you're also trained through the media. You're trained. I give you an example. Like, only in this country can you and I get into a scuffle physically in the hallway and we're going to get suspended. Or back in the day, we had that disturbance school law that we got rid of, thank God, because that was definitely fueling the school to prison pipeline. But you and I can get into a scuffle in the hallway and we're going to get suspended. There's going to be some punitive action to follow. Just a shoving match. But if we had that same scuffle 4 hours later on the football field, then it's no real issue.
Aggression is allowed.
Aggression, yeah, we pick and choose. We want to allow aggression. We reward aggression, right? And so, what do you when you get into a fight in school? What type of credit do you receive? You may not receive.
Depends if you win.
You may not receive no credit from what? From like the principal or the teacher, right? That girl you was really trying to impress. But you get credit. You get street credit. You get rewarded. Right. You get that reputation. And that's attractive to some individuals. And so they don't understand. You combine that reward system with not understanding how to deal with conflict. And then you have a world of where comfort is associated with conflict. It becomes our norm.
Now, is avoiding a conflict a skill that's good in conflict resolution? And I'll give you an example. I'm in a relationship. I know I'm about to hear something I don't want to hear from my significant other. I know it's going to be a confrontation. I pull back. Don't say nothing.
Right.
I'm trying to avoid.
Right.
I think that is a natural progression in relationships, especially I will say that from a man's standpoint. I think 90% of the time when we come into a conversation or something that is going to produce a conflict, we'll just avoid it. And I don't know if that's the appropriate way to do it. But I know through my experience that it saved me a lot of headaches.
That's kind of like when we talked about honesty and transparency before. Am I going to be transparent and tell you what you don't want to hear, and then we have this knockdown drag out?
Right.
Or
I just be honest and just only in the and see, we barely touched on this a little while ago, and I just explained it so you understand where we're coming from.
Sure.
It's the difference between honesty and transparency, right? Okay. Honesty is you ask me a question and I give you the truth. Transparency is me telling you without you having to ask. Right? That's me giving you information that you might not even have had the question to even ask me.
Okay.
Right? But hey, this is what's happening. I use this example all the time. I call my girlfriend, wife, or whatever, and I say, hey, me and Wayne and Wayne's secretary are going out downtown for dinner at 7 p.m. Okay?
Appreciate you giving me a secretary.
Right. Bro. You're welcome, bro. That's transparency, right? Honesty is we go do that, and then my girl or wife asks me, hey, so-and-so says she's seen you downtown with so-and-so. Oh, yeah, me, Wayne, and his secretary went out for lunch or dinner or whatever it was, right? That's the difference between honesty and transparency.
Okay, can both of those exist at the same time? Like, for example,
honesty is a lower level, I would think, of transparency.
So are you suggesting that transparency is something that is offered?
It's 100% offered, because if you don't ask, then there can be no transparency. If it's not asked, it's just honesty at that point.
So can transparency exist without when someone is asked?
I don't think so, because now you're just being honest, right? I'm just telling you what you've asked.
No, because you can give everything. You can give the full transparency of it. Because I could be honest and say, that was me, Wayne, and his secretary. Mm-hmm. But then I could be totally transparent. That was me, Wayne, and secretary Felicia.
You give all the details.
I'm giving all the details, So I think that
it can be, but I think the issue comes is when you have to be honest in that, then it's like, why you just didn't tell me that up front,
in
right?
the beginning.
So then it's just transparency is definitely a better way to go about things.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Than being honest.
But honesty, sometimes people can feel a certain way if only thing I'm doing is answering your questions, right?
Yeah, so I think honesty could exist on all levels, right? But I do think that your definition of transparency fits in this way, if I may, like, because I can be honest with an answer, but full transparency is it's that and then some, right? Just to cover it. So I if I'm understanding you correctly, that's what you mean. But to your question about is avoidance a good style to use? Absolutely not. It's not. And the only reason why we use it is because you've been trained to do so.
And you've had experiences that make it safe.
And it makes you absolutely. That's the reason why we use it. Mm-hmm. Just because we become good at doing something bad doesn't make it good.
Just make you good at something bad.
Make you good at something bad. And so we become good at one of the worst tools of conflict styles. How we have fighting styles, mm-hmm. like there's boxing. Back in the day, everybody thought they was
Karate Joe.
Everybody thought
Bruce Leroy,
right?
Checking out the
Bruce Leroy,
and that's the old Saturday night, Saturday joints,
absolutely,
right? Saturday joints at the cartoon.
So keep in that same vein, conflict styles are just like fighting styles. Right. And there are different ones. Unfortunately, there are some styles that are better than others.
So are you suggesting
I'm saying avoidance is the worst fighting style. Okay, it's the worst conflict style. So let me give you the other three.
Hold up before you do that. Sure. Keep that in your head now. So are you suggesting that these conflict resolution styles are the MMA of relationships? You know, because I if I'm a wrestler, you know, I got a certain style. I'm a boxer, or I'm familiar with judo. Mm. You know, this is MMA. You know, in these relationships, I mean, we've seen them get to MMA with somebody's actually physically assaulting each other. So this is a non-verbal MMA skill. See, I'm gonna break it down to that. But go ahead and give us some.
Sure. If you want, you know, label it as that. I love MMA.
Right.
I love watching it, and it is a combination of styles. Right. And there's nothing about MMA that speaks avoidance.
right. And see, that's what you're saying. You know, essentially, you can't avoid it because you avoid, you're gonna lose, you're gonna get beat down.
There is some types of MMA where you might have to avoid something.
That's defense.
No, that's defense. That's the defense. The avoidance is
I'm gonna run around the cage.
That or no. But you walk out the cage.
Right. That's the L. That's the automatic L.
So I want to say if we're going to utilize that analogy, then I think we should. I would remove avoidance as a style. Period. Because you can't avoid the fight. The conflict is the fight. The conflict is this person in front of you, and you all signed a contract to actually handle this fight. So it doesn't matter what conflict is in front of you. There are 4 different styles to address it. And since we're removing avoidance, and I'll tell you why avoidance should not even be a part of it. Matter of fact, let me just go into that since we're on avoidance. You know, avoidance is a style that ultimately ends up prolonging conflict. You know, we have protracted conflict between families, generational type conflicts where now we don't talk. We're first cousins, but because our parents, who are sisters, they stop talking. Now we don't mess with that side of the family
because they beefing over land.
Because they're beefing over whatever it might be, right? You know. So at the end of the day, you know, let's take it on. Let's use organizational conflict and style of avoidance. You know, you have 2 individuals who are working on an assembly line. One is older and one is a younger person. Older male, younger person. You already know that there's a conflict right there. There's a age gap, right? There's an age conflict there. One has one style of doing something. The other one has another style. The other one, the older one, talks to the younger one as if like he's talking to his son, right? Or his kids. The younger one, he's not trying to hear that. They both go to their manager and tell the manager, like, listen, you have to do something about, you know, X, Y, and Z. Right. And then the other one tells them the same thing. And then the manager, you know, believes that, you know, look, y'all go ahead and work that out. Right. But then like 2 weeks later, they get into a fist fight. Right. And then now they're fired. And now their families are affected. Right. In my opinion, because of the style of avoidance, that manager should be fired just as well. Because he doesn't have the skill set to actually get these 2 individuals to, first of all, to analyze that conflict effectively. And then to move them past that. So avoidance will, you know, it costs not just lives, but it also costs time. Again, as we stated earlier, it costs money. So avoidance is not cool like that. Only thing that you're doing when you use it in a romantic setting, when you utilize that style, is that you end up just allowing that individual to come up with their own thoughts about that conflict.
While I'm kicking the can down the road because I'm trying to avoid it.
Yeah, you know. And then you wondering why, you know, non-verbally she or he is giving you, you know, negative energy. It doesn't go anywhere. Conflict doesn't go anywhere. It's worse styles. So the other 3 styles are, one is, you know, contentious. You know, these are the individuals when they fight in this MMA battle that you're talking about. They use it's their way or the highway. You know, these are the individuals. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many pie charts you show them, how many bar graphs, how many facts. You know, understanding you broke it down how things happen in sequential order, and you know you even have it on video. It doesn't matter with these individuals. They're also very dangerous. They're more dangerous, in my opinion, than avoiders because avoiders are just, you know, they're just doing what they've been trained to do. But contentious people, you know, they don't care about what's right, right? They suffer from what Dr. Muwata Ashby stated, you know, when he talked about to constrict one's mind ultimately leads to physical, spiritual, and mental illness. They don't want to expand their mind. They're not trying to be curious. They don't want to learn about the conflict in itself. They just want to win.
My word is absolute.
They just want to win. They're dangerous individuals, and we have to call those individuals out. They're problematic, right? And when you remove curiosity from the table, you are automatically setting both parties up to lose.
You know, that's also a dangerous, if you're not dealing with someone who can accept questioning to get an answer, that's a dangerous person as well, because on both sides, for example, you're curious, so you're asking questions in this conflict.
Sure.
Right? I don't like you questioning me and asking me all these questions, right? So then the shutdown can become, because now you questioning everything I say, right?
Right.
That's the most dangerous relationship, but the most you see that in is a parental relationship, right?
Absolutely.
Between parent and child.
Right.
I've given you marching orders.
Right.
You've got questions. How dare you ask me any questions?
Absolutely.
I told you what to do. That's it. Absolute, as you said, right? And that's the typical household, right?
Unfortunately.
Maybe it's one you grew up in. I know it's one you grew up in. I know it's one I grew up in.
Sure.
These were the orders that you were given. This is what you do. You don't ask questions.
Sure.
And then I've experienced that in my beginning years in my current career, right? But now we're getting to the generation of the questions. These kids now have questions, right?
That's right.
You're not able to just give them, hey, this is what we're doing.
Order.
Well, why?
Right.
Can we do it this way?
Right.
Why can't go over here? It's the same thing. So now I'm on the other end of this, and I'm seeing these questions. I have to give these answers, right? I have to have these conversations and this conflict resolution, I guess, position that I'm in as well. So I think that it's important to say, see, and also acknowledge that some of these things are generational, right? As far as how you were raised, that bleeds into how you are, how you handle conflict, as you said before,
and
then how you, especially as a parent, specifically in that contentious is what you called it. Yeah, in that relationship for sure.
Yeah, all of them transcend generations. Like, so yeah, to your point, that's exactly why we need to reverse it. We need to decolonize our brains on how we handle conflict. First of all, how you view it. You should not automatically see conflict. If you polled your listeners right now, your watchers, and asked them what is the first word that come into their mind when they hear the word conflict,
confrontational,
it's going to be negative. Like, for the most part, you may have a few people who are different. You may have a few people who understand what trauma informed really means, and they may say things like opportunity. They may say words like, access, right? Change, teamwork, but those are far few in between. Most people are going to say something negative. And so contentious, the fighting style of contentious as a conflict style and avoidance is generationally transcended, from one generation to the next. If all you knew was to handle conflict by avoiding it, you're going to teach your children to do the same thing. So the other two, the second best, in my opinion, is compromise. Compromise is basically typically what you see attorneys do. Client may come in with a wish list of 3, but they're willing to accept 1, right? The other side is saying, I want 5. I want, let's just make it relevant. I want visitation the way I want it, and I want to pay this amount. Well, you didn't get visitation the way you want it, but the amount is something that you were willing to walk away with, right? As far as child support. So in other words, the problem with compromise is that, sure, it band-aids conflict, right? It may fix a problem, but unfortunately, it renders the relationship to be destroyed. So we have a family court system. We have a judicial system that does a really good job of handling problems, but we end up destroying relationships, and that's unfortunate. So compromise is someone still loses in a compromise.
You lose something.
You're losing something.
Lost something.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
because you wanted this.
Absolutely. And, and the last fighting style is collaboration, right? So a collaborative style is we're going to both work really, really, really hard at getting what each of us want. That seems crazy. But the only way for you to understand how that's possible is first off, you have to find out when you're dealing with a conflict with someone. Remember I told you it's a process, the same way you put food in, I put this drink in, and because I'm 53 years old, it won't be long before I'll be like, hey, yo, where's your bathroom? Right? So that's a process, right? So the same thing when it comes to conflict. And it matters not what the conflict is. Once you actually, let's just say, inhale a conflict, right? It's got to go through a process in your brain. And depending on what the conflict is, whether it's something that you saw, whether it's something that you heard, whether it's something that you smelled, right? Or even something that you tasted, right? Your brain goes through a process, right? And the first thing that it does is that, I apologize about that. The first thing that it does is that it forces you to be consciously disciplined, right? But unfortunately, we're immature in that type of discipline, right? So because we've been trained now to avoid, right? You don't talk to my man no more, so you decide you're just gonna cut him off. When we bragged about being friends for almost 30 years. So clearly we've had conflict, but we never avoided it. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Let's just be honest, right? We're still friends till this day because we were able to talk about any conflict that we had, right? And helping each other navigate through this space, this law enforcement space, right? So first of all, understanding the 3 parts of your brain, right? STEM, right? We call it stemming, right? That's fight or flight, right? And the limbic part of your brain is where you process a lot of your that's where your desires rest, and your interests, your goals, right? And your emotions, your feelings, they rest right there in your limbic. And then of course the frontal lobe is where we call it the CEO of the brain in the field of conflict. That's where you make all of your sound decisions, right? That's when you were 25, 26 years old and you was like, man, let me go ahead and get serious with this young lady. Right. But she was serious since 21. Why? Because her frontal lobe was already fully developed. So understanding where someone is in their brain and teaching them to exercise that process more effectively through practice, through the conflicts that don't require you to decide whether you're going to pull your gun or not. Through giving them the practice of knowing how their brain works through those conflicts that are not as harmful to you in terms of like your safety, but the small ones, right? The small ones. I'll use your clothes for an example. And when you put that outfit out, right? Have you ever been trying to get ready and then you put an outfit out and then, it looked fine on the bed, but it don't look good on you. So then, what seemed to be a simple conflict, now if you on a time constraint, now all of a sudden, and your wife is waiting for you, now all of a sudden the pressure picks up and you start moving to a different part of your brain, right? And depending on how much of a conflict that is, depending on how much your wife is upset that y'all about to be late, or you may be upset.
I was just going to say, just for the record, that
it pushes you to the stem.
Just for the record, I'm always ready. I'm never the one that's like having to change clothes. Just putting that out there. I'm ready for the conflict, if there is such a thing, based on that statement. I'm ready for that conflict. Okay.
So at the end of the day, it pushes you into your stem part of your brain, and you have to be mindful of that. You have to be aware, like, yo, I'm stemming right now. Like, so what we did something with Lower Richland High School. They experienced an unfortunate death with one of their football players. I think that was about
a couple of years ago,
2 summers ago. Yeah. So right before, spring break started, you had individuals. It was a lot of emotional angst there. Some of the people were friends with the person who shot, and this was all in house, right? And we were able to put the football team through a conflict resolution training, educated them on how their brain works, taught them nonverbal sign language on how to check each other nonverbally without me having to verbally attack. And so what stemmed from that training was we saw the relationship between the coaches and the players become amazingly strong. They were apologizing to each other when they realized how their brain works. This meant like, good decision, right? When someone missed a play or missed a tackle and they're emotional, right? Another player was tapping the back of their neck, letting them know that you stemming, chill. Like you stemming. Before you say anything, before you do something crazy, they're letting you know non-verbally without offending you that you stemming.
Using the part of the brain.
Essentially. Using, absolutely.
Right.
Like, yo, you right here.
Right.
And they learn from the training that that's not where you want to be. It's not where you make your best decisions.
Right.
Right. And so now there's some good decisions that may come from that. If you're in a fight or flight situation, I get that. That's where your go-to. Remember, we talk about being trained, right? When we were trained at the academy, those of us who have been in those tight situations, you realize that your training comes back to you. Same thing with how you deal with conflict. And unfortunately, you've been trained improperly. We've been trained and generationally. They can only pass down to us what they knew.
Well, the good thing about some of this stuff too, just through my personal experiences, when you've had so many situations of utilizing conflict resolution that does not work, when it doesn't work, now you know, okay, I'm not doing that. I just use this simple example. Me and Wayne were working on something, and I called young lady a liar.
Okay.
Ah, you're a liar, right? And that was the worst thing I could have said because it went from here to here immediately.
She immediately leaned back in the chair. She crossed the arms.
Yeah,
got defensive.
Immediately.
Sure.
And I learned immediately, like, okay, I can never call anybody a liar. They're not telling the truth. I got to find different ways to exercise the same thing, just differently. So I say that to say sometimes you need those experiences of how shit doesn't work in order to learn how to make it work.
Okay.
Right. But there's also this just old saying, smart man learns from his mistakes, right? But a step further than that, which I was taught, is a wise man learns from others.
Okay.
Right. Yes, I've seen what works for me and I make sure I doesn't do that anymore. But if I see it doesn't work for him, why do I still need to go through that same thing? Learn from other people's mistakes, right? That's probably one of the conflict resolution skills that definitely should be utilized as well. So pay attention to what's going on around you as well. And learn from what everyone else is going through too. You don't have to have those direct experiences to get experience from it.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you're tapping on the what the different types of conflict. Now I gave you the styles. Mm-hmm. The different types of conflict are also broken down into 4 categories. Interpersonal conflict is conflict between you and that young lady. Intra-group would be conflict within a family unit. Mm-hmm. And then an intergroup conflict would be conflict between 2 groups, like, the Republicans and the Democrats, right? But, the 4th one is something called intrapersonal conflict.
That's with yourself.
That's within yourself, right? And oftentimes when we're, we have to be, so conflict resolution is an actual science, right? It's more than just, it has 4 different careers associated with it. There's negotiations, facilitation, mediation, and then systems designing. Right? That's how deep conflict that you're talking about conflict like apartheid. People don't know that apartheid ended because of the strategy of conflict resolution in the form of systems designing. That's using mindfulness in a way to where I'm very careful about not when my clients come to our firm and I use mindfulness, they have to sit side by side. They don't sit opposing. Like this is confrontational right here. This right here is adversarial. Wow. It's very opposing, just in the nonverbal sense of it. And so understanding that intrapersonal conflict is where people are holding what Heen described in their book titled Difficult Conversations as the 3 conversations. You are holding 3 separate conversations within you when you're confronted with a conflict. First conversation is feelings, right? Feelings, right? The second conversation is what happened, the what happened conversation, right? And the third conversation is identity. So now, some people, think about it, whenever you've gotten into an argument with someone, conflict, if you will, they may be focused on how you made them feel.
Right. You got to take your feelings out of it sometimes. Sometimes.
But feelings is real. Feelings is real, right? And when someone is holding a feelings conversation within themselves interpersonally, you should be able to detect that and move yourself away from your feelings.
Right.
And give them space for that, because that requires a process, right?
Okay.
That requires a process. So plenty of crime scenes when I get there and they, you know how we talk, you know, we when we upset, we gonna let you know. And so plenty of times I was like, you know, I would tell other officers like, nah, chill. Yo, he upset. He got the right to be upset. He got the right to be upset. I'm in this man's house in front of his wife, his children upstairs listening. He has the right to be upset. But what are we taught at the academy? Come on,
I'm
now.
in control.
I'm in control. The worst approach ever, because I'm a man, right? So when you give the space for feelings, give the space for feelings. Hey, yell as much as you want to hear. It's 2:00 in the morning. Hey, just do me a favor. Keep it right here. What are we taught? We taught, you know, the whole separate thing, you know, and I get that. But when you do separate and safety is no longer an issue, why can't that man be upset?
See, I think
the feelings conversation, right?
We utilize that skill a lot without necessarily knowing that was the actual.
I know you skilled anyway, so that's why I was glad to come talk to you. Like you naturally skilled, Wayne. I'm gonna tell you that.
This guy,
I hadn't worked with him. I hadn't worked with this young brother here. I hadn't worked. He's 18 years in. He ain't really young like that, so he's a veteran. But I hadn't worked with this gentleman here. You know?
So definitely we utilize that without even knowing. You know,
you do
that particular.
The one thing. And just to go back a little bit, you touched on the three things that happen when that conflict with the feelings.
Those are three separate conversations that happen inside you.
And I almost feel like the fourth one would be, what am I going to do? Right? So you think about just how I interpreted what you said, the feelings and the conversations that you're having in within yourself. But I think to myself, anytime I'm involved in that kind of situation, the last thing I'm always thinking is, how am I going to respond?
And that's the resolution.
Right. But I'm just saying that would be the fourth carrot that I would pull is, now how am I going to respond to this conflict? Or after I've thought about how I felt, or I feel the feelings. And what were the other two you said?
Yeah. So the what happened and the identity. Right?
Correct.
Those things. So the what am I going to do would be the result of those things.
Okay.
Right. It would be, there's the next step. But oftentimes that decision is made based off of those three conversations.
Right.
Correct.
And so I want to definitely highlight the other two. So you understand, you've been in those conflicts, or responded to those where they're talking about like their feelings. Something or an event made them feel.
It's not always factual.
And we're not talking about factual. Because guess what? That's the next conversation. That's the what happened conversation.
Right.
So now you got one person in this romantic example you're utilizing for the purpose of this conversation. You have one individual having a feelings conversation, and you got another individual having a what happened conversation. They're like, that's not what happened. This is
right.
They're spitting their representation of the sequence of what happened, right? And how it happened. You said, remember when you said this? Remember when you said that? This is why oftentimes, and this is for your watchers also, your viewers. This is why you constantly and finding yourself in a downward spiral argument, because somebody's right. Soon as the one holding the feelings conversation is losing the what happened conversation, they start bringing up stuff that ain't not have anything to do with that. They start bringing up stuff.
You remember when
so-and-so
in 1999.
So when you focused on no, baby, it was what you said to me in front of your family. Like that's what I think is. I asked you not to say that to me in front of your family, right? And that's the focus. But what about when your mama sent that? It has nothing to do with the what happened conversation. So now you have two people who are frustrated. You have the individual interpersonally holding the what happened conversation. She's holding the feelings conversation. And then the results of those oftentimes bleed over into the third one, which is the identity conversation. Now, your comment reminds me of how I felt when I was traumatized, right? Now, your feelings, the fact that you're not acknowledging my feelings, that's deeper than this what happened conversation. Now you remind me of my pops. Now you remind me of my mom. Now you remind me of my ex-boyfriend. Now a lot of our sisters are dealing with with value issues. Like we weren't trained on how to acknowledge their value. We weren't trained on that. We guessed at it, right? And so now we don't understand that their feelings conversation.
Or what were the measurables that determine your value? You know what I'm saying? What do you use to determine that value?
You talking about in this example?
Yes, in that example. You say their value.
Right.
What are you using to determine your value?
The first thing that you should use is the fact that give value to their feelings. Like that's a real conversation. And put yourself in that situation. Know when you see someone actually stemming, right? They're in fight or flight mode. That is a physiological and biological response that they're going. Their hands start sweating. Think about yourself. So oftentimes when you see someone stemming, you need to be able to be consciously disciplined. And that goes to Dr. Becky Bailey, who came up with conscious discipline. You need to be consciously disciplined to move yourself out of stem. Two people down there throwing a tantrum is not going to work. Right? And so the identity conversation is deep because now what you said or what the conflict is over, now it
ain't got nothing to do with what we doing now.
It has, but it scarred me as relates to who I am as a person.
Right.
Right? How dare you talk to me like that? Like I'm no punk. You see the identity issue?
Right.
Like, yo, I'm not soft, fam. Like, who are you talking to, bro?
Right.
Like, that's how I start.
Right.
Like, yo, who are you talking to,
just
fam?
Because.
You heard what I said?
Yeah, like, yo, what?
Right,
say,
right.
yo, what? Say what? Yo, that's identity. Now, like, yo, you don't know me, fam.
Right.
My jersey coming out.
Right.
You don't know me.
Right.
Like, yo,
I can go back to the bricks in a minute.
Yo, like, this the thing, too. Like, that's how I used to start. Somebody look at you the wrong way. Like, yo, you know me, bro?
Right.
Like, you know me? Where is he at in their brains? I'm asking y'all.
You're going straight to identity, right?
Yo, they are
immediately
stemming. They stemming. But you need to recognize that. Like, y'all, you don't know what's going on in that individual's mind. So understanding how the brain works. So putting your brain through practice with respect to that process of processing a conflict. You use a strategy with everything else, but you don't use a strategy with how you process a problem.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do. We just used the one that we was taught.
Right. So, but avoidance. If the result is constantly negative or consistently negative, right? If it can land you in prison, then you might want to come up with a different strategy. So that's what the dissertation was about.
Okay.
Came up with something called it was originally the McDaniels decision-making model to help people actually process that, to make it something fluid that they can do on a regular basis to process conflict differently. And so it's an acronym. It basically stands for, I changed it from the McDaniels decision-making model to the Salmon solution model. So I want to remove myself from it, right? When I'm trying to help people with conflict, I don't want it, the Lord is working with me. So I'm very mindful and not appearing to be vain, or high and mighty, right? And so because I want the solution, I want people to utilize it. I don't want people to get stuck on the fact that it has my name on it,
Gotcha.
right?
Gotcha.
That it has my dad's name on it, right? My biological dad, Owen Salmons, who was a career social worker and retired as a psychotherapist. And, he was a psychotherapist and a social worker in the 70s in the Newark public school system. And so I want him to have that recognition as it relates to his legacy. But the Salmon solution model is an acronym. And it basically stands for I choose thorough, safe answers every day. I choose thorough, safe answers every day. The I stands for identify the problem accurately. This is where we run into problems. Because you stem in, or because you focused on just the feelings aspect of the conversation interpersonally, we never get a chance to identify the problem accurately.
Okay.
Right? And so we have to take our time with that, identify the problem accurately. We oftentimes, from a social standpoint, we pour dollars into a problem or a solution when the problem wasn't identified accurately, and now the solution is not sustainable.
Right.
This is why we don't remember some of that stuff that we were taught in the academy when it comes to verbal judo. It wasn't sustainable, and it was helpful, but it wasn't sustainable. Right. And so the I stands for identify the problem accurately. The C for choose stands for create a list of all possible solutions. Right. all possible solutions to include the ones that are not good. You want to see the negative and the positive. Yeah. Now watch what we're doing, right? Watch what we're doing, right? When you are getting someone to list in their mind or on paper, right, all of the possible solutions, negative. So if you upset with me and you got into a beef, one of those, and I felt like you tried to handle me in front of my lady or whatever, one of those solutions on that paper is I need to come see you, bro.
Knuckle up.
Yeah, knuckle up, like soon on site. Put that on there, right? Put that on there. And so you create a list of all possible solutions, both negative and positive. And then, of course, you want to, I choose thorough. You want to think about the consequence. The T for thorough is think about the consequences of each one. Each one. Of those what is the payment? What is the penalty associated with it? Think about that. Now, mind you, you know how the brain works. I told you, like the goal is to move them from stemming right here. So when you are forced to put yourself through practice, because you get better at it, just like boxing, right? You get better at it. Your fighting style, you get better at it if you practice it more, even with the conflicts that are not, that are not like,
super significant.
Yeah, like the ones that
small.
Yeah, stop trying to go into the boxing ring on championship night, but you didn't even go in the gym, right? So start with the small ones. So you start moving from yourself. You're moving your brain, right? Moving your brain, and you give what? Value to the negative thoughts too. Remember I told you value is important? You know about those 3 different conversations that's happening? Okay. You give value to like, I really feel like that's why I really feel like going up in his mouth, right? So that's why friends of these individuals are able to convince them like, yo, let's go ride out because they're giving value to the negative thought.
Right.
They're giving value to it, right? I can't stand that dude anyway. He tried to move forward like, yo, he think he died. And so the issue with that is that when you are putting yourself through this process, right, through this Salmon solution model, when you're putting yourself through it, you're working your brain, exercising it, right? You're acknowledging both positive and negative, but you're also processing your brain, processing that conflict through your brain to the appropriate spaces, right? Now, after you think about the negative and positive consequences of that, right? Think about the negative, positive consequences. Like if I go in his mouth, he gonna call the police. I got a warrant already. That ain't good, right? And so then, the essence safe is select the one with the least negative. Select the one with the least negative consequences.
So I'm not avoiding it.
You're not avoiding it.
Yeah, I'm still selecting.
You're still selecting
an option.
You're still selecting an option. So you're not using avoidance. But the fact that you're putting yourself through this process, and again, the more you do it, the better you become at it, right? To where it becomes almost instantaneous. The fact that you're able to do that is powerful,
right?
Right. We weren't about responding to gun violence, and we weren't about responding to domestic violence. We need to get ahead of the game.
Right.
We need to educate people on how to decolonize their brains on how they deal with conflict, and we need to teach them the tools. We need to give them the tools. Right. Stop just showing up to solve problems in court and destroying relationships. Because we still gotta those parents, they still gotta co-parent.
Right.
They still gotta co-parent. Now I don't like you. Yeah, you got child support, and I know where I get my kids, but I can't stand you. You get what I'm saying? Why? Because it's like they just left them in the ring. They just fix problems but break relationships, destroy relationships. So after you actually select the one with the least negative consequences, but at least even if you select a negative one, you know what those are. See, a lot of times our people are getting into, they respond. You investigated those cases, your investigation?
Several years, not anymore. But
all right, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So you talk to those individuals, like, so they really felt in the moment that they responded
correctly,
that they were
right,
that it was justified. See, you see that? So that's that process. It's just not put through. It's not utilized as the proper strategy is not utilized in that process. So after you select the one with the least negative consequences, the A means activate that solution with the least negative consequences. Activate and execute. That's another problem that we have in relationships. We activate the best solution, but as soon as that solution is met with an obstacle, we quit. Now you never really executed that. You're just really good at starting solutions, but you can't finish them.
You got to follow through with them.
You got to execute. So the A stands for activate and execute that solution with the least negative consequences. And the E stands for something that we should do every time we handle a problem. And that's evaluate whether it was something I would do again. What was good about it? What was bad about it? Can I share that with my son, with my daughter, right? Will I give them those tools? So that Salmon solution model it's published in the dissertation, and it's important to understand how the brain works when it comes to that.
Real quick, just for anybody who's interested in finding that, where can they find that dissertation that you said is published?
Oh, absolutely. So you can go through ProQuest. It's published in the world of academia. It's under my name, Dr. Shawn McDaniels. You can go to Nova Southeastern University and put in Dr. Walter McDaniels. My friends and family call me Shawn, but Dr. Walter McDaniels. And, a keyword search would be collaborative problem solving.
As you mentioned earlier, you're a professor at Benedict College. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what you mentioned earlier. You mentioned a little bit about the Conflict Resolution Center being the first on the HBCU campus. Tell us a little more about it and how can the community get involved with it?
Yeah, so listen, stop by. I can tell you, and you know me long enough to know that I'm not in the business of giving plugs where they're not deserved. I'm telling you right now, Benedict College is the energy on the campus up under the current leadership is just, it's we're on fire. Students are leaving that campus my students, number one, we are constantly teaching the importance of job placement, the importance of peer mentorship on campus. So by the time that they're ready to leave us, are ready to handle a professional environment, and with conflict resolution being taught to our students, and it's available for all students. So you don't have to be a criminal justice major. There's conflict resolution in business, conflict resolution in social work, and psychology. But our students are prepared to handle any environment as it relates to the issues associated with professional office politics. Conflict Resolution Center is where we teach our students how to utilize peer mediation. So what you would do is you would come in and you sign in and you would meet with a practitioner who has been trained, and you will be able to explain what the conflict is, and you tell us who you want to invite to a session, and then we would set that up and help you mediate that conflict with that particular individual. So a roommate and two roommates who were really close when they were freshmen and sophomore. Now they don't talk as seniors, but one of them is really wanting to fix that. They're allowed to come to the Conflict Resolution Center at Benedict College and actually get that conflict resolved through peer mediation. That's just one component of it. But yeah, I'm excited about. We have a conflict resolution minor now, 5 courses that touch on those areas that I mentioned to you before: negotiation, mediation, understanding how the body works, right? Human factors associated with dealing with conflict, and then we teach you the practical side of it. So facilitation and mediation. So for example, facilitation is, let's just say the high school dropout rate increases here in Richland too. You should be concerned about that because you have kids, right? Now, rather than that just be a parental problem, the profession of facilitation, up under the umbrella of conflict resolution, facilitation a facilitator will bring not just you as a parent, not just your child to the table, but also clearly a teacher. Who else belongs at the table? High school dropout rates have increased. I'm sorry. They've increased. Now it's a concern, right? Who else should be at the table?
I'll get some parents.
Like, so parents are there. Our kids are giving their input, which is something that we don't normally do, right? We need their input too. We're trying to fix a problem for them, but we don't. You mentioned it earlier. Like a household is problematic when it comes to that. We don't listen to the kids oftentimes. Like they kind of know what's going on better than we do at times, right?
Oh, yeah.
So who else belongs to the table? Social work belongs to the table. We need that profession. We need mental health specialists at the table. We need law enforcement at the table, right? But so facilitation is but each of those individuals operate in what is known as a silo. Like, DSS is blaming law enforcement. Law enforcement is blaming the parents and everybody else involved, right? Mental health workers and social work really, they're at odds, right? In some cases. So getting people conflict resolution, when utilizing facilitation, we're skilled in bringing all the right people to the table from the different backgrounds. It's a multidisciplinary approach to solving conflict. It's the best approach.
Somewhat familiar with these terms, a task force of some sort.
Absolutely. But
bring that analogy.
Yeah, but no one is comfortable. No one is allowed to remain comfortable in their own silo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we have like stop blaming each other. You know what I'm saying? And externalize the problem. The problem is high school dropout rates have increased, right? So law enforcement needs to offer, what are they seeing with respect to the arrest rates, right? Which grade levels are being arrested? What time of the day are they actually normally getting called? Right. What are some of the surrounding circumstances when it comes to that? The social work brings the understanding of the social dynamic, to the table. Right. The mental health worker brings, the trauma informed in conjunction with social work. They bring the cognitive understanding of what's happening. Right. The psychology behind it. Right. And so but if everyone's operating in a silo, right, and I really don't want to be here. I don't really want to be here because I don't, and you know how we are sometimes. Like we felt like no one else could tell us how to do our job.
Right. Because this is my lane. I'm the pro.
Right. I ain't here for all that. They break the law.
Right. Absolutely.
I ain't here for all that.
Yeah.
Call me when they do
something. That's not me. Yeah. Right. So, but unfortunately, our growth, our professional development in law enforcement is stifled because we don't entertain the mental health component. We don't entertain the social worker. We don't listen to, the community because they don't get it, right? And then we are oftentimes operating from our own stem, our own fight or flight. This is my life on the line, right? And so we have to get past that and understand conflict, more thoroughly.
Is there anything else y'all have going on with this conflict center down at Benedict College?
No, but I tell you some other things that are in the pipeline. This field is typically a field where, we're like the fixers. We can come in your company, we can come in and, you can drop us in a zone where two villages have been at odds. Like, so this is an international doctorate degree oftentimes. It's utilized internationally oftentimes. But I'm actually bringing it home. So, like, sure, I have opportunities in Uganda, Liberia. An ambassador from Liberia has reached out on wanting to get what we're giving our clients and what we're giving our students at Benedict College. But also, I think churches need it, right? I think church leadership need this type of training. Also, coupled with the training is body language. That stuff that you were only taught when you became an investigator, right? Other than that, law enforcement officers were just told to look for deer in the headlights.
As a young man, you learn body language real quick.
This is true.
Yeah, it depends on what body it's talking about.
What language you talk about. But when we're talking about professionalism and we're talking about professional development.
Oh, that body language.
Yeah, that body language, right?
My bad.
When we're talking about that, clearly we all have some natural talent in that, some more hypersensitive than others. But when you're talking about conflict, body language is everything. Everything.
So now, how can I hire you directly to give this training to my organization or association?
Absolutely. So I have a mediation firm that I did not share that with y'all earlier, but I have
that's where we hit.
Calm Dispute firm. It's a mediation, system designing, and facilitation firm. My partner and I, Jasmine Fan, we both entered into the PhD program at Nova at the same time. You can reach us at ADR, and ADR stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution, but you can reach us at 833-ADR-CALM, or you can actually shoot us, go to our website, and our website is www.calmdisputefirm.com. And so, get in contact with us. We'd love to sit down with you. We beta tested this in the prison system, this solution resolution approach. We taught at both Kershaw and Broad River Institute.
Okay, and it's 833 88
ADR CALM. CALM is a acronym for Conflict Analysis and Logistical Mediation.
Okay.
So we know that it works with respect to making sure that that it's practical, right? And when we couple it with the use of kinesics and understanding body language on a different level, you're able to get ahead of conflict, right? Before you're more than likely going to tell me you have an issue with me, you already felt it interpersonally, and you had to process that. We teach you how to actually understand how your brain works.
All right. Now, hey, man, let me tell you something now. Just tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
You come a long way from that kid from New Jersey playing Skelly.
I don't even know what Skelly is, bro.
You know what Skelly is. You take a little Skelly, you shoot the thing with little
it's called tops.
Skelly too.
Tops.
Skelly.
Depending on, I have no idea what we talking about.
Depending on where you're from, we call it different things, right? But we had the tops too. She flipped.
Okay.
Hold on.
We didn't put nothing in them. We just flipped them joints straight
Ain't no
across.
You had to put something.
Ain't no way.
Because I was just talking about what you put in it.
Nah. We might be talking about two different things then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tops required us to actually put some candle in it. Yeah, you had to put the candle in the tops. And if you really was really good, you get the very fine juices. The very fine juice top.
Good top.
The good top. It was a good top. And you had to,
Yeah.
You had to get that thing right. Yeah, or paper football. So yeah, I come from
a long way from that, man.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Taps,
I don't even know what is
yes,
taps.
You should do. I got a basketball.
Now you know we didn't grow up. You didn't grow up in Brick City.
No,
you grew up where?
I grew up in King Street and in Queens.
I'm a country dude, but I'm from New York.
Yeah, I'm from New York.
Right. You know, our games, they travel. So, yeah.
Okay. So let me see. I got a basketball in my hand.
Okay.
My feet can't touch the ground when I got it in my hand, right? So I got it, and I'm passing it to you. Right?
Interesting.
By the time you catch it, where your feet got to be?
Yeah, I have no idea what that game is. This is the thing about that.
It's taps, man.
We call it touch.
Touch?
We called it touch.
All right.
Yeah.
So you tell me I ain't did that in New Jersey?
That might be the difference between up north basketball and down south basketball.
No, I wasn't playing basketball down south.
Oh, why? Because
he was playing that game in New York too.
Yeah, why? Yeah, we ain't play that game. While y'all was over here touching it, trying to make sure your feet was right, we was really balling.
Oh.
No, I'm just saying.
I ain't from this place too. I don't claim it neither.
Okay.
I ain't from around here.
Nah.
Okay. But yes, I appreciate the opportunity. This stuff also, this career has helped me with. Are y'all familiar with reparations?
Of course.
All right. Well, understanding that Asheville is the second city in the country to have entertained reparations.
Yeah, Asheville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They were a progressive city.
Right.
Spent a little bit of time up there.
Yeah, Buncombe County was the first county in the country, and Asheville was the first city government to entertain it. And so this same degree allowed me to work with a great man by the name of Dr. Adrian Carter up under CDG, where that CDG actually won that contract, and so we were able to actually help with the examination of conflict and as it relates to the presence of racial harm in their policies.
You know, there's a interesting that you said.
You get what I'm saying?
That's a conversation for
racial harm and policies.
Yeah.
And that's what this degree has allowed me to be able to analyze, bro. Like, because sometimes violence doesn't have to be physical, right?
It's mental.
Violence. Listen, structural violence is what happened in Flint, Michigan, where a decision to change that water pipeline caused physical harm. He never touched them. Right. But now with the lead in the water, now they have generational conflict, right? Because now there's some learning disabilities associated with the children, right? So now that's generational. But that's structural violence, something that's lawfully done, but still harmful.
And see, great conversation. And I've been meaning to touch back, but when you said that about the water, think about the hog farms in North Carolina.
Okay.
And when they spray all these different toxins in the communities around, in particular, a lot of Black communities are being exposed to this, and there's a high cancer rate around many of these particular neighborhoods. A lot of them in North Carolina.
That's a conflict.
Definitely. When you say it like that. And you mentioned apartheid earlier in our conversation.
I love that.
And I've been watching this young man probably before he got big in the media for probably about 7-8 years. Young man, Julius Malema. And I've been studying him. I was like, there's a serious connection, and it's like almost mirror, South Africa and the United States, some of the behavior. And then now it's coming to to fruition because of the politics in the United States and Elon Musk, his relationship with the current president. And that's how you have so-called refugees have come to America seeking asylum from South Africa. That's a whole conversation that we got.
Things have switched in South Africa when it comes to the economy.
But in the manner in which those things are being dealt with aren't the way they were put in place. It's more diplomatic and systematic. It hasn't even started yet, but just the conversation of it is scaring people all the way over here.
Right.
So that's a great conversation that I know you and I have touched on so many things when it comes to the Black diaspora that I would love to get back into you with about that in particular.
Absolutely.
So that was just when you mentioned it early in our conversation. You said the word apartheid, and that just went straight to my mind.
Yeah. Well, you remember we used to have
that dialogue all the time.
One of the reasons why we got tight, because he was one of the few individuals I can get philosophical with, right? And it was comfortable. It wasn't viewed as, corny or what have you. But to that point, since you tapped on it, until we identify the conflict accurately, the real issue is about the fear of genetic annihilation. That's the real issue. That is the real issue. That's what these systems were put in place for. This, like, there's no other way to put it but just put it boldly, right? Dr. Frances Cress Welsing wrote a book called The ISIS Papers. And in that, she identified that when it comes to the world population,
among so many other things, I had that book in my house.
We discussed this book plenty of times. But when it comes to the world population, keep in mind, I'm a conflict practitioner, right? I see conflict differently. When it comes to the world population, 9/10 of the world's population are people of some form of color. They're melanated. I don't care if you're Asian, Latino, you're melanated. And when you have children, your children are going to be melanated. We're now learning the power of that melanin. But before learning the power of the melanin, understand that if you don't have melanin, if you cannot create color, you have a genuine fear of genetic annihilation. So what do you have to do? You have to put systems in place to make sure that, this abortion thing. It's
about preservation.
It's about preservation of
gene pool.
Absolutely. And so, we have to call it what it is. That's the conflict. The conflict isn't. It's not about abortion.
No.
Right. No. That's a solution put in place without identifying the problem accurately. So they skip the step. The conflict is about genetic annihilation.
Yeah. See,
the fear of it.
Yeah, we got to have
that's a real fear.
Great conversation.
That's a real fear.
Yeah, it is.
I get it.
It is.
I understand it. I just want my white brothers and sisters to just listen. I'm sorry. However, I understand the power of this melanin in my skin. I just wish that a lot of us did. The ability to persevere. We're resilient in a lot of different ways. No matter how many systems you put in place. How many, they want to allow white South Africans to come over. Is that?
Yes, the refugees.
Yeah, they want to allow them to come over.
The refugees.
But yet, our brothers and sisters from Haiti, there's too much melanin. You can't come over here. You can't come over here with all that.
For lack of a better word, right? They say it a little bit differently.
Huh?
They just saying it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Same mama, different daddy, like I like to say.
So at the end of the day, we have to be mindful of those things and understanding conflict accurately. I can't remember the author, but the author said this. Until a conflict has taught us everything that we need to know, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate. I think we've all let some conflicts linger a little bit longer than they needed to, and suffered the consequences maybe weeks, months, years, decades later, right?
Absolutely.
It's unfortunate, but it's a part of life. Doc, we appreciate you sliding by.
Absolutely.
Dropping a few gems on us. Definitely appreciate the conversation. I enjoyed it, learned a little bit, learned that I might operate in the stem a little bit more than I like.
Sure.
But maybe we can move that to the frontal lobe.
To the frontal lobe.
We want to get from the rooter to the right.
And competitiveness is in the limbic too. So that's fully developed.
Right? Yeah, I think it's located where?
Limbic.
The limbic,
right?
yeah, my limbic been fully developed since I was about 6 months.
I believe it. So how do we get people to move past? Sometimes we got to utilize competition as a tool. You know, when you're trying to educate someone, there's nothing wrong with you turning that into a impromptu debate. You know, as it relates to in a classroom setting, like my students tell you, quick, oh, okay, you that's your answer to that question. That's your answer. All right, both of you pick 2 people. All right, you each got 3 minutes. Each team got 3 minutes to actually research it. And then I want an opener, I want a closer, and then I want the third person. They're going to be their only person to answer questions.
Now, one thing I was remiss to say, it came across my mind while we were talking until you just said that, it came back. I had the pleasure of when I was working my last employer in the city of Columbia to have a couple of your students as interns. Immediately when we sat down, I sit them down, talked to them. You know, I always had a conversation with them about what their thought process is, what they want to do, right. What's your next couple of year plan. And then when I'm talking to them, I'm like, Professor McDaniels is your professor.
You already know.
And I already, yeah. So I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, they move different.
I can tell immediately.
Yeah, they move different. Listen, they are leaving Benedict College ready.
Right. And then
they're ready.
You know him? I was like, I know him.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go, right here.
Yeah, you called me one time. I think I was teaching. Right, you called me. I put you on the speakerphone. But yeah,
trust me, I know this man.
Oh yeah, so, know him.
Yeah, so it was just great to see.
And he didn't beat me in the game all the time.
Not all the time.
Forgot that. That didn't happen.
I ain't say all the time.
You got beat by FAMU. You might not want to, but you beat
FAMU. He used to get excited.
And then it'd be those times I pick FAMU, think I'm gonna make it happen again. Get blown.
I've never played him with FAMU. I don't even know where even know where that game came from.
I played with FAMU.
I'm just saying. I don't ever remember being beat by FAMU.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't remember.
Oh, no. FAMU was working them sticks. FAMU was working them sticks.
Who?
Florida A&M.
FAMU, yeah. Shout out to the HBCUs.
Shout out to the HBCUs for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, we thank you for tuning in, listening. I hope that you got something from this conversation, something to research. There's a lot of things that we discussed, a lot of things we learned that I'm going to even run back and utilize in my personal life as well. I hope that something you was able to take from this. Anything in closing, bro?
Nah, man. A lot of information. Soak it up and let it get to the frontal.
I'll leave you with a quote. My dear fraternity brother, Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "There's nothing more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Please, if you know you're not good with handling conflict, if you are a church leader, you're a teacher, you're a parent, you're a friend, you're an older brother, older sister, what have you, just listen, reach out. Let's get this process down pat and start with the smaller conflicts. And then, of course, my last comment would be, servant leadership is not an option. It's not. So it's strategically, masterfully, and spiritually stitched into the very fabric of our destinies. And so we have to get out here and serve and give and be diligent about doing so. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Appreciate it. And with that, catch you on the next one. Peace.